Hey y'all, I'm Jazz, also known as the purple-haired granny. Welcome to my messy, chaotic urban garden. Join me as I work to transform my neglected house and yard into a beautiful, thriving space. Together we'll tackle garden projects, DIY fixes, and share tips for bringing life back to an urban oasis. Subscribe and follow along on this wild and wonderful journey. In today's video, I'm going to give you a tour and the stories around my first garden. Let's dive in. First is my pink polka dotted. I got this on clearance at Walmart. It's kind of a delicate plant, but it's very pretty. The pink is more vibrant the more it's in the sunlight, but it also wilts very easily in this heat. Moving on to the chrysanthemum, as you saw, I just picked off a piece of the plant. That was a piece that when I repotted it, it broke off. I tried to keep it alive. I repotted it with the rest of the plant and it died. Probably didn't water it enough. Right here are some volunteer violets that I pulled out of the backyard. It's just to fill in that spot right there. This blank spot here, there used to be a wooden ramp there that I had a friend take out for me, but we just sort of left the wood there, or at least the frame of it, to rot, and we finally just got it pulled out and now have this space to put shade-tolerant plants in. This right here is my rose bush. It's probably been there for about 40 years or so. Originally, it was, I believe, pink? I'm not sure. Anyway, originally there was a different rose bush there. And what they used to do is they would graft newer roses onto older heirloom roses. And apparently, I guess what happened is the old rose bush died back and then the original rose bush grew in its spot. So the original heirloom variety grew here in this spot, and now it puts out tiny little red roses every year. This is a cold frame I built. The only help I really had with building it was my husband did help me stretch the chicken wire around it, and he did help a little bit with the plastic. The rest of it I built myself. I went to Home Depot, bought the strips of wood. They were about $2 a piece. Very, very cheap. Very, very soft wood. I put it all together and set it out in my yard to act as a cold frame for when things start getting cold. Before it was really time to start setting things out, I had a few things in the cold frame just to get them out of my house because I was really running out of space. We didn't open it today because really it's just sort of trashed inside. I've just been tossing pots and odds and ends in it as I was planting things out in the yard. We'll probably do a cleanup video of that in the fall. Now this blueberry here is a blueberry I bought from Walmart. I got it on clearance for $5. The mesh bag I'm holding on to, I put it over there because the squirrels won't stop treating my garden like a friggin' convenience store.
Not even supposed to be here today.
They ate all of the blueberries that were on it but one, which I gave to my granddaughter. She enjoyed it. But anyway, yeah, I put that on there to protect it. Alright, moving on to my first raised bed. Right here is my first zucchini. As you can see there's another smaller one there. Newsflash from the future. Yeah, that bigger zucchini ended up choking out that little zucchini. I never had to pull it. It just kind of withered away on its own. And that zucchini is now putting out actual fruit. I'm very excited. Moving on, this is my dill. I am taking off the flowers here to avoid the plant putting all its energy towards the flowers and seeds rather than just growing. I'm using the dill as a pest deterrent. I also plan on pickling my cucumber with it in the fall. Next is my cucumber plant. As you can see, things are kind of leggy because I just don't have a lot of light in my yard. I am going to be trellising this soon, as right now the stake was working at that point. This is obviously in the future. Now it's gotten so tall that it really needs a trellis, and I should have one coming very soon. Next is my oregano. I planted it this winter in hopes of just having it in my kitchen, but honestly, I hate these coconut things. They don't hold water very well, and honestly, the roots never really were able to... I don't know if it just wasn't getting enough light or what, but this oregano never really got very big, and as you can see here, it's still very small, and honestly now in the future it's still pretty small. I really ought to plant it out, but I haven't yet. I feel like these coconut things are just not really meant for what I was trying to use them for. I planted marigolds around the garden for pest deterrent and to attract pollinators, and as the older flowers die off, I am deadheading the plants so that the plant can put the energy towards new flowers instead of wasting energy on the dying flowers. Next is my basil. I grew it this winter just like the oregano in the same type of pots, and it just wasn't growing. It got to about 2 inches tall, and that was it. And it just wasn't getting enough water. It wasn't getting enough space for the roots to grow. So I planted them outside, and they are doing fantastic now. I know they don't look like they're really taking off here in this video, but they are big and bushy, and I'm barely keeping up with harvesting them now. I've got Thai basil that I propagated from Cow and Winds in Oklahoma City. I just basically propagated it. I just threw them in a cup of water, waited for them to root, and then planted them outside. The purple basil I got from Walmart just as starts and planted them out. Every once in a while I go through and pluck off the tops so they get nice and bushy. At this point, I'm just harvesting to keep them up. Okay, to explain the cups, I was trying to start some peppers. And honestly, they never really took off. I don't know if there just wasn't enough light, enough nutrients, or what, but the plants are still really small and puny and just aren't doing anything. The ones I'm pointing at here, I planted out Thai chilies. They're just seeds I got from Dollar Tree. And I tried planting out jalapenos and habaneros, but again, nothing really took off. And then onto my cayenne peppers. As you can see, I've already got some peppers growing. As soon as these guys turn red, I pluck them off. And as you can see, they're just really getting started. Now, onto the other side of the bed, we have ghost peppers. As you can see, we're starting to get some flowers. So hopefully we'll be getting some ghost peppers at some point. Now, on down that side, we have next to the ghost peppers, we have the Romas. I'm hoping to get another cattle panel trellis in the future to let things on this side of the bed grow up. These 6 Roma plants I got as starts from the local nursery. Most of them are bearing fruit. Unfortunately, this plant was already broken at the main stalk when I got it from the store, and I planted it hoping it would do something, and it did. It started to grow. Nature always finds a way, I guess. Then moving on down, I have my cherry tomatoes. Again, I got them as starts from the same local nursery. As you can see, there's some yellowing on my leaves, and I think I just need to give some fertilization, or I'm not watering enough, or they're blighted. I really don't know. They're still struggling. Moving on down, these are my beefsteaks. This one plant is struggling because of me.
It's not your fault. It's mine.
I was trying to prune it, and I cut this branch instead of the branch next to it, and realized that at some point the plant wasn't doing well. The leaves were curling and nothing was growing up. And then I looked at the stem and realized I'd topped it, that I had chopped off the main stem instead of a side leaf branch thing. And yeah, so it's recovering, but it's way behind the other plants. Then underneath the tomato plants, I've planted rue. I heard they were great companion plants for tomatoes.
A night of companionship, if you know what I mean.
And they also worked as a pest deterrent. Here I have a cattle fence that I turned into a trellis, and I'm just helping the tomatoes vine up and over it. On the opposite side of my trellis here, I have some beans my oldest granddaughter helped me plant. Sadly, again, the squirrels are getting fat off my garden and have ruined the beans. They demolished them. They're gone. They don't exist anymore. We will try beans again next year. Oh well, life is life. I am thinking about buying stuff to distract the squirrels from my goods. Please leave suggestions in the comments if you know how to get the squirrels to quit digging in my garden and eating my stuff. Over here, I have my morning glories. They are so pretty. They are vining flowers, and I have them here so they can vine up the trellis. They put off little flowers that die super fast, so if you catch them in the morning, you can see them bloom before they go. It's shady here, so they may not vine all the way up, and they may not even really flower. I'm not sure yet. Here we have my blueberries. I got these winter before last and planted them last spring. That first winter, I overwintered them and planted them out, and then they did absolutely nothing. They barely grew, they just sat there. I've now pruned them back, overwintered them outside last winter, and by burying them, pruning them back. And then this spring they took off. I still haven't got any blueberries, and I'm honestly thinking about moving them. I think part of my problem is just that I don't get enough light in my yard. And maybe poor fertilization? I'm not sure, but they're not really growing. Next, I have some irises that my oldest granddaughter gave me. They are a lovely purple and white. We didn't know what color they were until they bloomed this spring. This is some volunteer mint that came up last year, and I just sort of let it sit there and do its thing. And it came up last year, it sprang up again this spring. I'm sure it'll be back next year. Just gonna keep letting it do its thing. Next is this swimming pool. Right now it's mostly just weeds and wild garlic growing in it. I don't know what I intended for it originally or what I planted there originally, but now it's just wildflowers and volunteer garlic. I leave it there because it's pretty. I like the garlic when the scapes open up and it's just this pretty purple flower. But once the garlic dies back, I do end up weed eating it just to knock it back so it doesn't bother me. This is the second raised bed where I have planted my sage. When I planted it, I didn't realize that it walks about. It will start spreading. As you can see, this was a singular plant that's turned into 3. My friend in Colorado warned me that it would take over, and I didn't understand what she meant. Now I know what she meant by takeover. It will split, and more plants will bush out from there. All right, splitting off from there, this is another bed I want to show you. This is some sage that I planted out last summer, and it managed to survive the whole winter and came back nice and big and bushy and twice the size it was last year. I'm pretty sure it's going to come back every year despite our below freezing temps and ice storms and whatnot. Now I'm continuing to be distracted by this bed. These are some volunteer morning glories that popped up from last year. These older morning glories, I'm just letting them vine out over the bed. We'd literally been showing my son-in-law these, and in between showing him this morning and starting the recording, the flowers started to wilt. This is a great spot for morning glories because it gets lots of really good morning light. All right, now back to the second garden bed where I have more basil. I expected it to do better over here, but honestly, once I took that garlic out, spoiler, I do take the garlic out. That's another video. It just took off. I didn't give this stuff enough time, honestly. It took off. All right, next is the garlic. It is a bit curly and small, and honestly, shortly after this video, it started to die back, so I pulled it. It was putting off garlic scapes, which would eventually become flowers if I let them go. With the garlic scapes, you can pick them off before they flower, dry them out, grind them up, and they taste like garlic powder. The reason I'm picking the flowers is so the plant can focus on the bulb and not in making seeds. So I just keep an eye out for those garlic scapes, pop them off, put them in my freezer, and wait until I have enough to dehydrate and grind up. An animal came through here and squished some of my garlic. I put the forks here to keep the animals and cats from stomping through, and it doesn't seem to work. Maybe I should put more down. I don't know. Comments? Suggestions? Whatever. Here I have the parsley. I got these as starts from the local nursery, and it's just starting to take off. Now, back over to the third garden bed, to the grapevine. The grape plant that has a story. So my friend had this grape plant that her mom planted a bajillion years ago, and she wanted to get rid of it. And so she asked me if I wanted it, and I said, sure, give it to me. I'll plant it in my yard, no problem. She and her friend spend like an hour digging out this 3-foot taproot, and they gave it to me. I bring it home, and I tried to dig a hole deep enough. So I got it home, and I proceeded to try to dig a hole, and got about a foot down into my clay soil, and couldn't dig any further. So I ran to Home Depot, got those bricks you see there, got some soil, and built that little raised bed up around that grape plant. And I thought it'd be a fantastic idea to throw some tomato plants in there, and a watermelon plant. They did great. Anyway, I went away for 3 weeks last year, and left my husband in charge, and I gave him explicit instructions on how to water and fertilize while I was gone, and he followed it to the letter, except my instructions sucked and he over fertilized and nearly killed the tomatoes and the grape plant. Apparently they're almost impossible to kill. And here's proof. The irises. These irises were planted here probably about 1986. Many of you may know irises tend to propagate themselves and fill out. For the longest time I could not figure out why my irises were not continuing to spread. They weren't very big, they kept disappearing. Where are they every spring? So they were playing kitchen with them and were cutting them up. They were digging them up and cutting up the bulbs. They would dig them up, chop them up, and pretend they were potatoes. Potatoes! I actually talked to one of my daughters, my third oldest, and she actually thought they were something like potatoes or something. She didn't realize they were flowers at all. So that's where all my irises were going.
And you didn't find out until like
I
2
didn't.
years
Yeah, I didn't
ago.
find out until again they were all adults, and the one who is currently holding the camera told me all about it.
Ooh, he's snitching.
So anyway, my irises. These over here are white, and they were easily 4 foot tall. Next is my lilies. These first lilies are orange when they bloom. They've had a rough year this year, and so never ended up. Between the animals and workmen stomping on them, they just never got a chance to bloom this year. Alright, then there's some more irises. I don't know what color all of them are. Some of them I got from my friend who gave me the grape plant. Inside this circle here, I have a little fairy house, and it's tucked up against our no longer connected gas lamp. It did used to light once, but the gas has been since disconnected, and it would take some serious maintenance to get it back up and running. Next, we have our royal lilies. These ones have a big white bloom, and as you can see, the bloom gets to be about as big as my hand. The little one next to it actually ended up not being a royal lily. It's actually white and pink instead of just solid white, and it was a much smaller bloom, maybe about the size of the palm of my hand. Next, we have more lilies. If you can't tell, I like lilies. These are all dark red. They're so pretty when they're in bloom. These lilies went nuts this year. They put off so many blooms. I've never seen that before, so I'm very happy with how these turned out. Now, in this spot, we used to have a pink rose bush, but it died off. It struggled for years, and it finally just died off, and I took all the stump and everything out. In that same circle, I did put hydrangeas, but they never did come up. Next, we are headed back to the front of my house where I have my bathtub planter. This area obviously needs a lot of cleanup, but that'll be for future videos. In this tub, I did plant some sunflowers and marigolds, and as you can see, this is not the best place for them. Between the lack of sunlight and squirrels, they just have not made it. Next, we have some more irises. It looks like some of them got stepped on, but these are also recovering from my children. If anyone has any suggestions of what I can do to save these or improve them, let me know. I don't know why they're looking so rough. We did have a crabapple tree here once, but it has perished. The squirrels completely decimated the fruit, and eventually it just died off. And then there's all these pecan trees. They dumped sap and pecans all over the yard and cars, and the squirrels throw the pecans at us. And yeah, it's a mess every fall. Okay, so this is the pathway to our backyard. I have tried to plant things back here to make a garden bed, but there's just no light, so nothing has ever really grown there. This is the backyard. As you can see, it has a lot of work that needs to be done. It's very overgrown. Back by the fence, I have a loofah, and my plan is to have it grow up and along the fence line behind, through the tomatoes and along the fence line. Right next to it, I have more beefsteak tomatoes. Here, my feral tomatoes are putting off more tomatoes than the ones up front. Most likely because they get a lot more light back here. As you can see, there are a ton. I don't know, maybe you can't see. Okay, there are a ton of tomatoes back there. I have thrown some morning glory seeds out here, and some have taken off, but not many. My house does naturally have ivy all over the place, and it's mixed in with that morning glory there. Right here, we have some more zucchini and cucumbers. I have put up some netting to give them something to vine up, and as you can see, we also have some ivy taking advantage. And then finally, over here, we have some wildflowers. My plan here is to make a raised bed out of fence posts that I have around the property. And I'm going to make a raised bed for some wildflowers It was originally going to be for more shaded area, but spoiler, it's not as shaded, and there will be an update on that later. My plans have changed a little bit, but there is still going to be a raised bed going in there. What I'm putting in it is changing. But we'll go into that later once the raised bed's up and running. So, as you can see, there is a lot to do here on this property. We hope you had a great time touring the garden today. Please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.